So the third gate of the grief is the sorrows of the world. And the sorrows of the world are at this moment almost endless. We're hearing news every single day. I just read yesterday that the monarch butterfly population has been cut down by over a half in North America. And, to watch the butterfly migration periodically is a thing of ecstatic beauty.
Mm.
But to know that they are disappearing,
It's too much. Mm.
yeah, it just breaks my heart,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, I really
So,
honor that.
the sorrows of the world are, cascading around us every day. And part of the problem is that again, we're asked to face them privately, and
Mm.
they're too much. Our psyches were never wired for 24-hour a day news cycles of trauma about species, about languages disappearing, about, you know, collapsing glaciers, about, watersheds being polluted, about the disappearance of salmon. And we can't handle this,
Yeah,
so we need community to be able to grieve together about the losses of the world.
we need a big holding to be able to go there and feel that.
We absolutely do. We
Mm.
absolutely do. And I've done many grief rituals for environmental activists, and they are so stuffed full of sorrow that they almost become cold. They become
Yeah,
frozen in their grief.
yeah,
Grief,
and
we have to keep grief warm in order for it to move. And that means we have to keep the heart open. But when you're bombarded with so much trauma of the sorrows of the world, the heart wisely closes down until it can be offered the conditions it requires to warm back up and express the grief communally.
mm,
But this is a big, big sorrow right now that will continue to grow larger as climate catastrophe amplifies, magnifies, and we see more and more grief
yeah,
as this affects refugee status, as the central part of the planet becomes almost uninhabitable because of temperature rise. We're just beginning what I call the long dark. We're entering what I call the long dark, which is could be years, most likely decades, and most likely generations.
mm,
If we're fortunate enough to survive that much time, before we can begin to really repair enough of the damage to our, well, here come the sirens.
yeah.
uh,
They're warning us.
warning us. So, um, the third gate is something that we need to speak about often. The thing that gives me some, and I use the word very carefully, some measure of hope is that the sorrows of the world are the ones that are really cracking our denial about grief. Um, so I'm hoping it's the broken heart that can fall in love with the world again
Mm.
and feel like it's up to us to show up and through our own convictions and our own commitments to protect and preserve what remains of this shimmering world. So that's really important what we're talking about.
Yeah, in my own life, I feel there's nothing more valuable that I could do than perhaps get some land and expand an ancient woodland or plant a new forest or something like that, and just leave a habitat for other beings to do their thing.
Hmm. Yeah, whatever we can do. And I think it begins in grief. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a case that you mentioned in your book as being a grief that isn't supposed to just be discharged and then healed. It's one that it's good to feel because it motivates us to do what's necessary.
Yeah, there are various kinds of grief. One is redemptive grief, where we process the grief and we redeem the loss. But then there's an idea that comes from uh, Mary Watkins and Helene Sherman called non redemptive grief. And non-redemptive grief is associated with places that have known tremendous suffering, like the genocide in Rwanda, or the Holocaust in Germany. We're not supposed to forget these. We're not supposed to just go past them. They are supposed to be forms of permanent memory. And now with species extinctions, this becomes a whole nother threshold of non-redemptive mourning. We should not forget those who have gone. We should not forget the Circe's butterfly, or the passenger pigeon, or the white rhinoceros. We should not forget those who have been silenced.
Mm.
We should continue to remember and mourn them, and acknowledge that their absence has become a profound silence and sorrow in our hearts.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep the book of life open with their names in it.
Yes.